Debs, thank you very much. It was very nice. I just wanted to check there, was it 1,000 questions or 750?
We'll check, it's 750 questions, but then you also get the 321 questions. So together,
I thought it was wow. Okay. Debs, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And so it's nice to see a lot of people here I haven't seen for a while. Ahmed, that's lovely to see you. Afnan, nice to see everybody. Margaret and Goshay, we always see, he's a regular. Melissa, lovely to see you as well. Nice to see everyone back again. So I wanted to just start this week because I've been doing a lot of work in terms of vetting or looking at the approach on developing a data quality framework. And I wanted to just ask some questions in the beginning in terms of the famous framework or the famous approach defined in the DMBOK for data quality, the data quality framework. And I wanted to see if anyone remembers that. And specifically Monica, because she's busy learning for her exam at the moment. It's the acronym is PDCA. Who remembers what that framework is? And who could explain it as well? Penelope?
Plan, do, check, act, yay!
Yay! Fantastic. Monica, what's happening there?
I was trying to type fast and it didn't work.
And then that would be nice. So then it's a case of, can anyone explain in a couple of sentences what those different phases are of plan, do, check, act? Who would like to explain it? I know when especially when I train, I just said, you got to remember these words, plan, do, check, act. And people remember them, but then when it comes to explaining, then it's like, oh, I'm not sure what that actually means. Who could help us out on explaining that? Penelope.
I'll give it a bash. First, you plan what you're going to do, and this can apply to such a wide variety. I don't know exactly how much detail to explain it in, but first you plan, then you execute your plan, and that has whatever steps you've planned in your process. And then you check whether it's working or not, and that's the important thing in the feedback loop, is to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to, and if it's not, then you act to change it, or if it is working the way it is, then you continue with the second iteration of the cycle, as I understand it, to refine the thing and then continue round and round.
Okay. All right, so you're right at a high level, and then maybe just to give some details, the planning is about choosing the data quality issues that you are going to tackle. Remember, we spoke about using that Pareto principle, where you choose, you want to choose those 20% of data quality issues that are causing 80% of the problem. And very helpful when you do data quality assessments is to identify that 20% that's going to give you the 80% uplift. And as part of that, you would have done as planning the root cause analysis, and then you would do a remediation plan, and then you would the do is actually going to fix it, fix all the problems that you faced. And then the check is, and part of the do is you actually re-establish your new data quality targets. And then as part of the check is to say, well, have we achieved those data quality targets? If not, what caused the problem? What was the challenge? And then we go and do a situation of the act is quite interesting. What it says is there are, from the changes or from the way in which we fix the problem, there could be some emerging issues that the business data stewards could act on before we go through another big life cycle or iteration of the plan, do, check, act. So are there any questions on that? Because that plan, do, check, act is very important. I'm going to explain to you now how that fits in with all the different frameworks, but I'm hoping that's a good summary of the DQ frameworks that you'd set up. And as you can see on my screen, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 15, and there's actually quite a few more, but these are the ones that you can choose from in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So any questions before we go any further? And if anyone would like to share, have they got something? Have they made a decision? And then it's a case of pick one or create your own and bring some of the different elements in. So any comments, any questions? Isham. No comments, no questions. Yes, Gushay.
Maybe just a comment. So in terms of the plan, your plan can also be determined by bigger context like company strategies and things like that. And then taking that and taking, as you said, the 20 top ones and focusing on that in terms of quality. Because I believe if you focus on those 20 ones, you've got everything done for a typical migration or a typical preparation for a big project. So just my comments.
Yeah, that whole planning phase, and it's part of some of the tricky situations you get into, is let's say you want to start for the very first time and you don't have a whole lot of data quality issues hanging around, then you may choose to do some sets of analysis on some of your data products or something to do with your strategy to be able to um, continue with that. And then if you have got a whole lot of data qualities that you've been collecting as data governance, remember you've been collecting all these issues, and then you say, okay, we believe we've got a core set of issues that should be dealt with. Now let's prioritize those things and start tackling them.
Yeah, that's precisely. So maybe like, for example, like a product catalog. Maybe you want to, revamp your company's product catalog. So then
Yeah.
you can
So
kind of
what we also like to do, Gushay, is as we are doing the implementation of data products, we put that into the SDLC where we'd actually do some level of use case quality. So before I start giving my data set to the data scientists or to the BI people, I need to make sure it's curated and we have the right veracity and that people can start using it. So I also refer to that as what we call the fresh water catalog. So we have, when you start off, you can have all your data sets in what we call a salty water catalog. And as we curate them, we'd move them into a fresh water, and then BI and AI and advanced analytics should be working off those data sets. Okay, so yes, that's correct. Magnus, I see you've added here. You'd rather think of it, PDCA is to plan, do, study, adjust, and yes, that can also be. And I think a lot of it comes from the Shewhart-Deming cycle. Okay, so they came from a research background, and that was plan the research, define your hypotheses, do the research, then review or study the results, as you're saying, review it, and then Deming added the act or the adjust to the Shewhart cycle. So that's basically where it came from. Magnus, is that sort of the line that you follow as well? Okay, less academic. All right. Okay, great. Now, one of the things that struck me, and I don't know if any of you have, when I do my data quality course, I actually look at a lot of the thought leaders. And there's someone called Juran. Can anyone tell me what what they call his framework? Who remembers what the Juran framework is called? It's not on here, so you won't find it. Anyone remember Juran? Juran, and they actually asked that in the specialist exam. He was the one who came up with all of that different ways of thinking, and not pushing people in terms of going too fast. So it was value, accuracy over speed, some of those principal areas. So yeah, Juran, anyone? Nobody, no takers on the Juran. I'm sure Veronica's around, she'll remember.
I thought it was Deming that valued accuracy over speed. Was it Juran?
Yeah, they had that confusion where they remember the questions actually gave it to Juran, but it was Deming.
It was Deming. So I got that one wrong.
Yeah. Do you remember what the framework was called for Juran?
No.
Okay, so Stuart Deming, they created the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Juran has the Juran Trilogy. Okay, so he's got that trilogy, and we're actually going to see it now. And then we've got Larry English, and we've got Tom Redman that have created these different ones. So they've all gone about, and even Laura Sebastian Coleman, she's created her own one, and Jeanette McGilry, she's got that POSMAD. Who remembers the POSMAD one? So it was when I first started looking at this, I was like, wow, I've got something like 20 different ones now. How would I assess which one suits me? Which one suits my organization, and which one is an appropriate approach to this thing? Now, what you can see here is a way of doing the classifications, and it's actually quite nice in terms of similar to the Plan, Do, Check, Act. This assessment is part of the planning, so it's part of the planning phase where we are understanding what the issues are, building the data quality rules, measuring it, and then understanding where we're at. And it's based on those set of dimensions. And then we've got the improvement, which is the Do, Check, Act. And it's interesting when I map the Plan, Do, Check, Act onto this assessment and improvement, most of my work sat in the assessment side. So I felt that a lot of my activities and deliverables were lopsided, mainly sitting at the assessment level. So it was interesting now that I had to just review it. And then one of the issues that I was unaware of until maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago, is this cost dimension in terms of how do we create a taxonomy for cost? Okay, that when we actually look at a data quality issue, how do we evaluate the cost of that data quality issue, and then against what taxonomy? And I'm sure Afnan remembers that we were building a taxonomy for data value realization. And data value realization also has the requirement to create a value taxonomy, and there's a cost taxonomy that data quality has. Yes, so that's POSMAD, and POSMAD actually talks about the life cycle of data quality. Okay. All right, so without too much information in that, let's go through and try to give you an idea on how we would choose one of these frameworks, or what are the important features. How would we understand the frameworks? Okay, so let's have a look at some of the essential concepts. All right. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to just to share with you is please remember that the frameworks that we are talking about now, they are to an extent on the other side of the definitions, right? So remember what we had this in terms of data governance, that we would do a data value realization workshop, we would do a maturity assessment. For example, you do one on your data quality. You would then build a data quality strategy that's part of your data strategy. And then what would be the operating model for the data quality program? And then we would have practice establishment in terms of practice definition, and then practice operationalization, meaning we take that into the business. And then there's practice assurance. So every single time we iterate on one of these use cases on plan, do, check, act, or POSMAD, there would be an assurance to say, well, how well did we do? Could we improve it? And if one, and I'll show you when we get to the Juran Trilogy about the reduction on waste, did we achieve the level of improvement that we expected to achieve? And that's what we do in practice assurance. Okay, and then at the same time, one would have to have our data quality policies and procedures and everything like that, which we do in practice definition, and then we would want to review that as we're moving forward. Okay, so please remember that you still, these frameworks we're referring to now do not focus on the definition, principles, policies, and procedures of data quality. Okay, they're really just the operational side of it. Okay, so let's go now. It's a situation that I want to share with you, is the case of if we were to review these different the different frameworks, what criteria would we use to review them, and how would we standardize on it? So if I was to define if you can see here, this is POSMAD, which is plan, obtain, store, maintain, apply, dispose. It's very different to plan, do, check, act. So if I was to just pause here at the moment, is to say, well, you know, here's one approach, and I'm actually going to just share with you a few of these different ones. There's an ISO one as well. Let me just get it out for you. Okay. So if I was to show you an Excel spreadsheet that I've been preparing with all these different ones, okay, there's the plan, do, check, act. Maybe if I just make it bigger for you. Okay, then there's the Juran Trilogy in quality programming, and he's got quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. Okay, and as you can see, this planning is not about the planning we have in the DMBOK. Remember those phases of define high quality, the criteria of high quality data, the policies and procedures. This is more about the planning of the resolution of data quality issues. And then we have Danette McGilroy. Can you see there's a POSMAD? That's what it looks like over there on the different areas. And then we've got, strange enough, we've got an ISO 8061. And can you see here, it works with plan, do, check, act. And it also adds these elements on the side, which is part of the support that it needs from data architecture and information technology and human resources. So that's pretty much the planning as we understand it. And here you can see just some of the breakdowns of planning, control, assurance, improvement, and then we go round and round with the different areas that we have. Okay, any questions on that? And then we'd be interested to say, well, which one would you choose? Which one makes sense for you and your organization? How would you go about that? Because you'll need to choose one of them, right? You want to, when you define all your procedures, you'd want to have something like this as a backing to say, have my procedures dealt with all these different areas, and do they work in this data quality approach? Yes, Kashay.
Hi, Howard. So maybe some of So it depends on, there's not one that's wrong. It
No,
depends on,
no.
there's one, it depends on what you want to achieve out of it. So,
Yes.
so in some instances, you just want to change you want to do a big project where you want to change organizational structures. Then you use a framework for that. Another one is you just want to just implement a simple data quality project. So then you use this frame. So it depends on, depends on what you want to achieve out of that framework, but none of them are wrong.
No, none of them are wrong. No, that's what I actually realized, because there's not something that's not addressed in the DMBOK in terms of how do we choose it, because the DMBOK really just refers to this, and it doesn't really tell us about the Juran Trilogy. It doesn't tell us about POSMAD. It doesn't tell us about ISO 8000. It says yes, there's a thing, and issues like that. So it actually doesn't tell you a lot about these different frameworks, which is interesting because it should be an essential concept. But what's important, Gushay, just to make sure that there's something you understand is DQ is never ending. So the plan, do, check, act, and then there's the thing. That's why they keep it in the circle. Is this repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So if we actually have to get it going for on a continual basis, and we may have by use case, but it's almost dealing with our technical debts. Gushay, I don't know if that helps you understand. I've got data quality issues that are coming at me all the time. This is wrong. This is wrong. Some of them need a big revamp in terms of process. So it's basically we should have a sprint team that's dealing with these issues all the time. It never ends. And I'd like to just show you the way that Juran. I love this way that, I mean, if we just look at the way that Juran talks about it, I'm getting. This is not looking really nice. Maybe it's the way I moved my Excel spreadsheet. Sorry. Don't know where it's gone now. Okay. I'll get. There it is. There it is. Okay. So what he does is he understands the cost of this poor quality, if we can see there, and then he says that we're going to operate in this what they call quality control level. Okay, I'm hoping you can see that there's a quality control level, and that quality control level is operational for a period of time until we choose to have another iteration. Can you see that? We're operating at this mode, and one of the things I teach my people is when we build data quality rules and expectations, let's say we do an assessment and our critical data elements are sitting at 50%. Okay, we may have some critical data elements that are sitting at 50%, and we will then go and do a increment to get not to 100%, but to get to 60%. Okay, so can you see here, we want to go to the new zone of quality control. Okay, so how do we get there? So what are the 20% of the issues that if we fix, we can get to the next level? 60%, then the next one would be 70, 80, and we'd want to go as close as possible. And this is the approach that you'll take with quality, is that you'll keep on repeating it, trying to get to this new zone of quality. Does that make sense?
I think data quality is a never-ending process. It's like your dishes. You have to wash them always. You have to always clean your data.
100%. Okay, so that's why we need to build in this framework that allows us to go round and round and round, and the framework's going to help us get improvements and improve on our quality. Yes, Ahmed.
Yes, Howard, thank you so much. But going with that framework, for example, do you think it's applicable when you work in healthcare, for instance?
Oh, yes,
I mean,
definitely. So I've actually got I've got a case study for you called CIHI, which is the Canadian Health Information Area, and they've implemented their own one, Ahmed. So I've got a health case study for us to take you through it. They are very particular about the quality of their information.
So, okay. So, I mean, because, I mean, working with that critical zone, it can have some side effects because of all the insights you get out of this data. I mean, if you have it like in a 50% accuracy, which could be an issue.
Yes,
but nevertheless, I mean, you cannot have a data that's 100% from the get-go. I mean, you have to go through several iterations. But I just wonder how this can be applied in an industry like healthcare, for instance.
You're right. So what you will find, Ahmed, is let's say we do, or this is, part of the problem is when we start out, people will be complaining about the quality of data, and we would do an initial assessment, and we may be shocked to say, oh, shucks, it's a lot lower than we expected it to be, because remember, the quality is about our expectation, and we may get a surprise, and we would then say, shucks, we're sitting quite far off of our expectations. But if we keep our expectations too high, then every single time we do an assessment, we're going to fail. And basically what the result of the assessment is trying to do is to say, if we drop below our current expectations, we should extend stop using the report because it's too low for us to function on. Now that's where you have to start somewhere. You have to get that quality area somewhere, and you're right. If it's what I have to do sometimes is when it's too low, we raise it as a risk to the company, and we would then have to do something really serious and really quickly to get it to the right level, and that may mean hiring people to phone. We actually did that in one situation where we got university students to actually contact the people because the market was complaining about the quality of their data, and it become public. And they hired something like 20 or 30 students to phone the customers and to resolve the data issues. So they had to do it. And they had to take some serious action to get that thing sorted out. I'm hoping that answers your question, Ahmed.
Yes, thank you, Howard.
You're right. I mean, depending on the criticality, depending on how critical it is, we may need to go into urgent risk management. If we can deal with it, then we would go zone improvement at a time. As you say, we'll never go to 100. We need to go to the next level. What's the next acceptable level? And it's one of the problems with data quality is if you try to go for broke, you just, how am I going to get there? And do I have enough information to get my critical data element to that 80% dependent on that dimension? Okay. I'm hoping I've managed to convince you that a framework is important. The question now we come to is which one is the one that we're going to use? Which one makes the most sense? And there's an example of the net, and here's another example of ISO, and then there's something called DMAIC, which is another one I'm going to show you how to look at and how to understand as well. But critical again, as CDOs, as data governance people, what is my framework that we are going to use in our organization? And then we're going to keep on training people. What are we trying to achieve? Okay, so now if I was to try to say, well, for me to compare the frameworks, I need to standardize the criteria. Okay, so how am I going to standardize the review criteria that I'll be able to compare apples with apples? Because POSMAD is life cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act is dealing with other issues or just the way in which we do our implementation and assessment. So they're already different. Now we shouldn't compare those two together. Okay. So just as a quick definition, frameworks are to provide a coherent and a holistic system for quality management. So that goes to that sort of goes to your comment there, Goshe, on it's not a means to an end. It's basically providing a way in which we create a holistic system for quality that will achieve what we need to achieve and we can assure it. Okay. So now we've got very general quality management frameworks that apply to any organization: TQM, total quality, ISO, 6 Sigma, European Foundation for Quality, Balanced Scorecard, Lean Six Sigma. And here is an interesting one. It's like, for example, ISO emphasizes certification and standardization of processes. Of course, ISO is all about certification. But I just wanted to share with the Saudi people, Afnan, and now this would be really nice in terms of getting all the ministries within Saudi to achieve a data quality certification and standardization. And I'm actually going to show you a framework that allows governments to have data quality assessments of the different data, especially if you're sharing data. Then you want to have an assessment of that data by an independent body before you start using that data, if you can make a decision. I think I was Afnan, I was actually talking to GOSI, and they were getting some of the details from the Ministry of Interior, and in some cases the date of birth changed, and they had a different thing. Now, once that benefit had been established, they got into lots of trouble with changes of that policy. So they're fighting with a lot, and this is ISO. They're saying let's standardize. Six Sigma focuses on the quality control of products in terms of data products. Okay, which is I'm hoping a lot of you would be interested in this. Now we start to build our products, and Six Sigma works on that. And then Lean or Juran emphasizes inefficiency by reducing waste. So that's about getting our processes lean. Okay. All right, so that's we already got a level of choosing the different frameworks. There's some ideas there. And then these are basically the different areas that I believe we can do a comparison. Okay. So yes, let's look at the phases and the steps. And I'm going to give you some examples of how I've compared different frameworks, strategies and techniques to assess and improve. So what techniques do they suggest that we can use in our assessment and in our improvement? And then a lot of them talk about dimensions. What dimensions are appropriate? What are the costs of data quality issues? Do they refer to us evaluating the cost? Types of data. Now, that one was quite a surprise for me, where they, one thought that most of the times we're dealing with structured data, and then how do we handle semi-structured, and in some cases, how do we handle unstructured data, especially data coming in from call centers or videos or audio logs? How do we look at the quality of that, and how do we assess that type of data? And then we've got types of systems, and that's also important now, is because our systems are running the business process, our systems are creating the data lineage or the data journey, and how would we now integrate quality into the source system so that it doesn't create bad data? Okay, so remember we always say fix it at the root. And so we'd want to say, well, how can we integrate our data quality into a application? Now, let's talk about a simple approach. If I was getting lots of genders, let's talk about genders. We always refer to that because it confuses me a lot. So if we had an other in our gender, and we keep on getting other, now that's going to lead to a data quality problem when we need to understand what gender we should be working, or what is the classification of gender. So we now need to say, guys, we can't keep on allowing this other in our reference data. How are we going to improve the drop down, and how are we going to help people choose the right gender? Okay, so we need to be able to integrate wherever we've got a code drop down or things like that. How are we going to ensure that the system chooses the right one and manages the bad quality coming in? Then we've got organizational structures. Now, this is really important when we are sharing data between organizations and sharing data within group companies or different organizations. So we've now got to be very careful of how do we then extend this data quality to the organizational level. Also look at the processes that are used to create, read, and update the data. So are we dealing with data warehousing processes and things like that? And then finally, the data quality services. So these are the set of perspectives that we can use to review the different data quality frameworks. Just want to again pause there. Are there any questions? I hope I'm not losing too many of you in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, Magnus.
Yes, hi. Very interesting. One of the characteristics I would strongly look for is the ability to be distributed with, well, more or less self-sufficient governing teams.
Yes.
As we
Yes.
have, as
With
I
the
think
mesh,
more and more
fabric.
turn to
Yeah.
distributed data management.
Yes. Yes. Now that same way is that we can have these multiple organizational structures or cross boundaries. You can be using that across your different domains. You know, when you get to a data product domain, data fabric, you can use the same ideas that you've actually got a centralized broker, quality broker service. And so there's a nice, and I've got some examples called iStat. iStat is an Italian one that they implemented across multiple organizations, and they use that to, before you want to share data between these different areas, you can actually call iStat via a SOA interface, and it will give you a quality assessment of the data that you're working on.
Interesting. Very. Thanks.
Okay. Fantastic. All righty, so let's keep going. And then we have, what we can do is when we look at these phases, I actually like what they've done here. And the CDQ did a really nice job of trying to provide a complete set of phases. And it looks at three phases: state reconstruction, assessment, and improvement. Now, what I liked about the state reconstruction is basically saying, when I've got a data quality issue, in some cases, I may not have all my metadata that relates to my critical data elements. So I've got to now go and, shucks, what are my data processes? What are my system processes? What services? What is the metadata, the data quality, and different areas like that. So I have to rebuild the state of my data, the state of my processes, and the state of my organization. And my, as Magnus was referring to, the distribution. So that's almost the first thing that I found. Lots of different frameworks are not paying attention to the step of, well, before you even start, have you got your definitions right? Have you got your conceptual, logical, your data domains right? When do we get time to uplift our data quality or our metadata, the quality of our metadata, to support these assessments and definitions like that. So I like that step. And then they actually do the step of assessment and measurement. So remember that can be broken up into the profiling. Remember, we do a profiling, which is almost the statistical analysis of mins and maxes, data types, how many nulls, how many distincts, and that you can run you can run that, you can automate that on all your data elements. And then when you find a critical data element, you can go back and say, well, what does that look like for this data element? What is my distribution look like? Is it bimodal? Is it single mode? Is it normal distribution? But that's important so that when you do the allocation of dimensions or data quality rules, you know what the shape of the data is before you start. Okay, so we do a data quality profile. We then use tools like histograms and things like that to show the data, the data steward, the business data steward, this is what your data looks like. And a great example of, oh, I need completeness to be 100%. And then when we look at it and you've only got 60% complete, we have to ask the question, well, how are we going to get there? You know, is it possible to get to 100%? And that's some change that we have to work with our data stewards to be able to reduce their expectations. Let's bring it down to a reasonable level. Otherwise, I'm going to start shouting every morning or every time we move data, I'm going to shout that your data quality is not good enough. And then we're going to have some challenges. Okay, so this is the assessment measurement phase. And it's also the assessment of the causes, that root cause analysis. So I'm going to ask again, how many people remember the 5 different ways of doing root cause analysis? Who's been studying on the DMBOK? Monica, do you remember? Give me one root cause analysis tool, technique. Yes, Fishbone, Ahmed, nice. Monica, anything more? Sorry?
I said I still remember.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you know what the Japanese name is for fishbone?
Don't make it very hard now.
Ishikawa. Ishikawa.
Yes.
Ishikawa.
Fantastic. Excellent. Nice one. Afnan, you also got it right. Anyone else? So what were the others? So we had fishbone or Ishikawa diagram. Yes, the 5 W's, fantastic. The 5 Y's, they call them, not the 5 wives and 1 husband, the 5 Y's. That was also Danette McGilroy that asked, you have to ask why 5 times to get to the root cause. Then we've got track and trace. Remember track and trace? Track and trace is the DMBOK's way of confusing us in terms of data lineage. Okay. And we got process analysis. And how many have we got now? The 5 Y's, track and trace, process analysis, and Pareto, the Pareto one. Veronica, am I correct? Those are the 5s.
Yes, you are.
Fantastic. Okay, I have to keep checking. With All right, improvement. Now, this is the hard one. Okay, what do we do? Improvement. This is where we start. Remember, lean starts going to efficiency and waste. So now how do we deal with this improvement? And we've got 2 levels of categories. We've got a category of data-driven improvement or process-driven. Okay, so process-driven means that we need to go back to the application and change the application. And a lot of the times, we can't really do that, or it's going to take us a lot longer. So what do we do in the meantime? So in the meantime, we can apply a data-driven approach. And in some cases, you have to apply the data-driven to say, well, we understand that all of these others should be not applicable or whatever it is in terms of if you've overloaded on field overloading, let's set it to not applicable, so that we don't use that in our distribution or our sharing of the data. Okay, so improvement. Now we're saying, okay, we must do the root cause analysis. We then look at the cost of fixing, data-driven and process-driven, and then also what's the long term. So we take a quick win or a long-term approach, and we have to keep on thinking about both of them. And how do we get to what's referred to as the new data quality targets? And that's that Juran Trilogy. You're saying, okay, we're currently sitting here. How do we bring it down the error rate to the next level? How do we improve that? Okay. All right. Any questions on those common phases? So that's your high level basic set of grouping of phases or stages that any framework should help you in. Okay. And I'm sure you're seeing that Plan, Do, Check, Act doesn't really talk about state reconstruction. Yes, Penelope, did you want to ask a question?
I have a question about the Juran Trilogy. Would that make it Juran, Juran, Juran then?
By Juran. Yes, Veronica.
On mute.
Veronica,
I actually wanted to do a funny face, not a hand.
Oh, okay.
Send a reaction. Cool. I thought it was a good joke.
Yes, it is. Fantastic. All right. Let's go to now the assessment phase. What are the common steps of doing an assessment? So this is also the important one. Data analysis, which is a complete understanding. Data analysis would be related to data profiling. Data quality requirement analysis is when we sit with the data stewards and understand their expectations. Here, remember, this is data consumers, or that's that fit for purpose. Where do you need it to be? Where can we get to the next level? And this is the hard discussion, because we could have multiple people wanting different things, and then we have to get the right set of expectations by consumer. Okay. Then we would want to look at the critical areas of where our data is getting corrupted, what part of the lineage, what are the areas, and that's helpful to have that processing model, the processing matrix that the architects build. Remember, they did that CRUD matrix, and it's along the business process. Very, very important. The architects, you need to give us this information so that we can choose where to do it. And then, of course, the measurement of quality, dimension selection. Which dimensions are we going to focus on? What are we looking at? Objective, quantitative metrics or subjective qualitative metrics? And I'm going to pause there and just ask anybody if they can explain what the differences between objective and subjective metrics are. Who knows those different metrics? Cheers, Andrew. Anyone can give me, how would we deal with subjective metrics and objective metrics? Quantitative versus qualitative.
I mean, if we're talking about objective matrix, basically it's, it's measurable. It's something that you can measure. It doesn't fall under the perception of the end users. However, subjective is open to your to your understanding, to your perspective of looking at things.
That is correct. So you'd actually use a survey to get the subjective qualitative metrics, whereas quantitative I can automate using data quality rules. I can validate that 100%. Ahmed, you've defined it exactly the way you'd like it. So a subjective would be probably with your customers in terms of what's their customer experience like. Okay. So that's what you're gonna. Is it usable? I liked what they actually have another. ISO has another software engineering. They have a quality on software applications, almost the usability of the application. So that can be quite subjective. Gaucher?
Maybe something else also on the subjective side is people trends. So I mean, you can pick up trends of how people are moving or eating and things like that. That can also be a subjective measurement. For example, if you want to see something high level now, so if you want to see the impact of removing um, animal-based cheese with plant-based cheese, and you will see that in the sales of that kind of cheese. So you can then pick that up as seeing how the people react to that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
they actually it's interesting, Gaucher. We're one of the there's a I think it was Ahmed. This may be of interest to you. The Canadian review that I did on that health information, they actually separated what they call data quality with information quality, Gaucher. And data quality was a lot of this quantitative stuff that you could do with dimensions. And then information quality was at the analytics or statistical interpretation of the patterns and understanding. So they differentiated that to also get a view on how trustworthy the analytics were, and they created a different approach to analytical data quality and so statistical and data. And remember, in like machine models, in big data, you'll have your error rates and things like that. So they do have that in different approaches. Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm sort of running out of time here. Now I'll just get to some of these things. So the different steps for improvement: evaluation of costs, assignment of process responsibilities, data responsibilities, cause of errors, root cause, contextual, qualitative, improvement solutions, process control, process design. So you can see that this improvement phase is quite intense. And I'm not going to spend all the time here because I'm going to provide you at the end of these 4 weeks. I'll give you basic access to all of this, the deck that I have, so that you can actually work through it yourself. So let me not, I'll go through them pretty quickly. Then we've got improvement strategies. And can you see here, there's data-driven versus process-driven. So data-driven is I'll go and directly modify the value of data. But we also know, remember, where most of the issues come from. And one of the big issues where data issues come from was fixing data. Issues caused by fixing issues. Okay, so we want to stay away from that one, but sometimes we have to. And then we've got process-driven. So here is different techniques for data-driven. Well, one of them is actually get new data. Go and find a place that gives you better quality data. That's where you'd use the quality broker, standardization, record linking. That's quite interesting. Trustworthiness, error localization and correction. Here we have process-driven. And then how do we compare the two? So how do we look at process-driven being long-term, data-driven cost efficiency, short-term? How do we make a decision? How do we put that to a vote? These are on the dimensions. I'm sure you know a lot about those different ones. Unfortunately, what I wanted to share with you is at this stage, we still have different people defining accuracy differently and completeness. And what I like to do is to go down to that concept level where we can get better meaning and better understanding. Okay. Another great understanding here is what is going to be the cost of fixing, the cost of data quality program, and where we have to be careful in terms of justifying this in our organization is that as we increase the cost of data quality program, we should be reducing the cost of poor quality. Now, that means that you are understanding and quantifying the cost of poor quality. Otherwise, you're going to battle to define a business case for the data quality program if you can't understand the cost of poor quality. Okay, so we need ways of defining the poor quality. Types of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. We need to play. Then how do we do our data quality rules? This is another area where we have to compare the different elements. How do we define the rules? And then here are the different examples of the different frameworks. ISTAT is that one that talks to multiple organizations, dynamic quality. Here we have David Loshen, the Qualitative, and then we had Larry English. Can you see he has Larry English, total information quality. Then we've got Wang. So here we've got some of the big people that have built these quality frameworks, and we need to make a decision about which one's right for us. Okay. And here I'm just doing helpful for you to say, well, for this one, can you see that TDQM doesn't do data quality requirement analysis? That's that fit for purpose data quality rules. Ahmed, there is CIHI. They don't have any quality rules, process modeling, or the measurement of quality. Okay, so you choose which one is appropriate, and then you may need to supplement your framework with one that does it. So as an example, if I choose something like CIHI, I can then supplement it with the CDQ's way of doing requirements analysis. Okay. And these are the different ways in which we compare the different elements. Okay. Can you see here there's a cost qualification on how do we look at the costs? Then there's a mapping on bringing these different areas over here. The different systems. Can you see here we've got one big ERP system. And Magnus, this is also a scenario where we look at distributed. Can these different areas deal with distributed, data warehouse, cooperative, and then web-based? Okay. All right. So that's where I'm going to end today. If there are any questions, we'll pick it up again on Thursday. But again, I'm hoping you can see that we need to pay attention to what these frameworks are doing for us, choosing the right framework, and not maybe just sticking to plan, do, check, act that the DMBOK taught us about. How do we get a wider one, and how do we then vet that this is appropriate? Any questions, comments, questions? Love to have any feedback. If there's something that you'd like me to focus on next week. Ahmed, yes, sir.
I got similar questions, but maybe it can be considered in the next session. But in the tables, I mean, just a couple of slides before you had in the table focused. In the table when you were, putting all the, over here, for example, extensible to other metrics. What do you mean? Like, is it possible to use a couple of metrics?
Yes, so this is quite interesting in terms of they've got standardized metrics that TDQM publish to use with the framework, and then we've got open, which means you can add your own metrics. All right. So yes, some of them dictate a certain amount of metrics, but I think a lot of it now, Ahmed, comes as well as when you choose a tool. Now that probing and assessments, they would be critical to your collection of data to respond to the metrics and to populate the metrics. And the different tools would adhere to a certain methodology or something like that.
Okay. And in the next couple of slides, when you were categorizing the next one, please. The next one. After next one. Yeah, right here. Now, here you're talking about how to use these frameworks with monolithic or distributed systems. But what do you mean by implicitly considered focus? What do you mean by that? Or strongly?
Okay. So when they published the framework, they didn't specifically mention distributed systems, but it can be applied to distributed systems.
Okay. Well, when you say focus, that's mean they.
So I'll actually give you an example. Can you see here iStat is focused and focused? So let me give you, I'm going to give you a quick example of that. Let me see if I can remember where it's at. Oh yes, here we go. There's Magnus may be interested. This is one that specifically works on distributed systems and organizations. So they've built a whole framework on being able to share this across different aspects.
Okay.
So this one you could see as a data domain or a different system, and if the systems were to interact via SOA, they would be able to say, okay, I'm looking for this type of data, and what is the current level of quality on this data? And one of the things that this was actually quite interesting, when you have this thing of choosing, well, maybe I should go to another source. They would give a certain rating to the quality against the different dimensions, and then if the provider changes or improves the quality and gets to that next level, then you'd be notified that there's been an improvement on the data. And Ahmed, this was really a real eye-opener for me when I was working in the central bank, and we had Reuters and Bloomberg, and at that stage we were using Bloomberg, and they were complaining that it was too expensive. So I said, well, let's just use Reuters. And someone nearly fell off their chair and said, do you know, 5 years ago, Bloomberg was a disaster and we had this and this problem. Now we live with that perception. I couldn't change it. I couldn't change that perception. And it was something that people just stuck with.
Yeah.
So we've got a hand up. Mohammed, yes, sir.
Hi, Howard. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks, and yourself?
Thank you very much. Good. Just I have noticed, like during the data quality assessment, when we are choosing data quality dimension, shall we consider the accuracy in this phase, or we shall keep it at maybe later stage when we get accurate business?
You're 100% correct. And let me just show you, I do this as a data quality expectation. If anyone's interested, there's a fantastic Python interface and a website that looks at Python extensions to calculating data quality. They've got some lovely formulas, and I'm going to show you that. But can you see here, when I set up my expectation with the user, Mohammed, I actually look at any CDE across any of the data quality dimensions. They'll tell us completeness, accuracy, and this is the way I build it, and it's at what we refer to as a data quality requirement. That's when accuracy comes in, and we need to be able to define what the minimum is, the maximum, what's the state of the rule, how critical is it, what is it for data set, and then what is the user or the consumer based. I'm hoping that answers your question.
Yeah. But this should all be like accuracy based on column level, let's say. But if I want to make like accuracy,
you actually got that granularity. Remember in the DMBOK, you've actually talked a granularity at element level, row level, data set, data schema level. So you've actually got those 4 levels of granularity. I'm not sure if you're aware of those 4 levels, Mohammed.
Yeah.
So you're also doing it, and a good example at a row level is I could have an address, and the suburb is dependent on the postal, so there's lots of elements of the address that I need to assess at a row level and not at an element level.
Okay, thank you. So, as a summary, accuracy can be chosen as in data quality assessment phase.
Yes. So I could and remember, accuracy has those. Accuracy actually has two concepts. My definition of accuracy: one is agrees with the real world, and one is agrees to a source. So real world is, I would actually then assess a schema level. And an example I use, and I've had it in one situation for HR employment. Well, we would need to check salary, we need to check leave, we need to check all these different elements of an employee to see, well, what is our state of employee data? You're not just checking one element, all of those different elements need to be correct. And data privacy is another one, Mohammed, where you'd look at the quality of your understanding of your customers. And it wouldn't just be on one area. There'd be multiple areas where you'd need to validate the accuracy. How good is our data with respect to the real world? And so you'd look at it across many different areas. Accuracy will go across many different areas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Thanks, Mohammed. Nice, good question.
Thank you too.
Maybe
Alrighty.
just something. Sorry, did you say that
yes,
on the Python data quality things? I think that
Yes.
would be nice.
Yes, okay. So there's a fantastic website. Now I wanted to share with you. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but there's a new approach which is called an IE workspace. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but you can actually invite multiple people to contribute. Can you see there's a data quality framework workspace? And so all of the work that I've done in collections and that we can all work together on it. Now this is the one that I found that you may be interested. Is called Great Expectations, and it's got a lot of routines, Python routines, that help us assess the quality. So let me just, otherwise I can get some weird answers there. There we go. How do we ensure data quality with Great Expectations? So they've got a really nice framework that they use, and there's a whole lot of these are what they refer to as your assessment or your probes. And they've got all these probes defined. You can define your own probes, and you can then you'll tell them where the data is registered, and it will run against these different frameworks to validate your quality.
Howard, could you please share the link in the chat?
Of course I can. For you guys,
Thank you,
anything.
Thank you, sir.
Here we are. Okay. So nice data profiling, looking at different data sources, integration with Snowflake, all sorts of. They're really doing a fantastic job of making that open.
Very nice, and I see they also work with Data IQ, which is also nice.
Yes. Alrighty, guys. I suppose one could talk about data quality all night, all day.
Thanks a lot, Howard.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see you again, Ahmed.
Thank you. Same here.
Yes.
Hope to see you in Riyadh if you come over here.
Hi.
Yes, I'll be there in August. I'll give you a shout, Ahmed.
Sure, we'll be happy to see you again.
Fantastic coffee.
You got it.
Cheers,
Thank you,
man.
Veronica.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers, Magnus. Nice to
Brilliant.
see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.